I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High.
And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also.
One of the most debated subjects saints argue is when a day starts. The first serious flaw in this, most people generally believe that the word even or evening means the whole dark period of night. In this episode of Moedim, we will tackle what is a day before we can calculate his feast days the right way. Let's begin.
Before I begin, I want you to know that this understanding may not jump out at you at first. I'm going to give you all the tools to get the understanding, but only the Most High can give the increase. You seriously may have to come back to this video after letting this concept sink into your spirit, and then listen back very carefully to see if this is truly the word of Yahweh. Do your own due diligence and go back to see if the things being presented are true. Through a critical analysis of the text and a basic understanding of the Hebrew language, idioms, and culture, this should not be too hard to understand. But then again, Yisrael is stubborn, so I will also try to give some examples elsewhere in the Tanakh, proving that the evening marks the ending of a day, not the beginning of a new day. For our purposes, I will use the KJV Bible, as this is what most of our people are familiar with, while inserting the appropriate Hebraic words as necessary. After this lesson, the entirety of the Hebrew Scriptures will make a lot more sense as you study the Word of Yahweh. It may go without saying that many Israelites are under the erroneous assumption that a day begins in the evening. I've already explained in the last video that this is a Jewish and Islamic custom, a heathen custom which is not present in the Tanakh. Remember what Hanavi Yirmiyahu, or the prophet Jeremiah, says in Yirmiyahu 10:2. Thus saith Yahweh, Learn not the ways of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. The heathens are all too much concerned with what they see in the sky to the point that they are completely terrified and are superstitious when they look up. So much so that the heathen have given names to the lights in heaven and worship them still to this day through the various pagan religions on earth. Contrary to this mainstream religion, now cloaked under the banner of science, the luminaries in the heavens are there to serve as the Most High's eternal timepiece. Again, we'll go to Bereshith 1 and 4. And Elohim said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. The Most High gave us lights to determine our days, seasons, and years, and darkness is not mentioned as a factor for determining scriptural time, meaning that all days and times must proceed or go forth with their respective light. Elohim 104:19. He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knoweth his going down. Thou makest darkness, and it is night, wherein all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. The Most High divided the light from the darkness. These time periods are completely separate and opposite to each other. The Most High declares his glory again in Yeshayahu 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, Yehovah, do all these things. The Most High defines the word day and night respectively in Bereshith 1:4-5. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. And Elohim divided the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Day is defined as light only, whereas the word darkness is defined as night only. The Hebrew word or is a feminine noun meaning light, light of day, light of the heavenly luminaries, the moon, sun, stars, daybreak, dawn, morning light, or daylight. Now let's define a word which recent linguists tend to translate poorly: the evening. The word for evening is erev. This is a word that the KJV Bible does not know how to translate very well, and this is the reason why there is so much confusion as to what this word actually means. Strong's Concordance shows us that the word erev is translated 13 different ways. It is rendered as evening, days, and night, not to mention a few other outrageous translations such as mingled, people, and even Arabia. Clearly, these definitions and translations have been brought about to confuse the whole house of Israel in this American captivity. So we must look to a more ancient understanding of the Hebrew language in order to get the actual meaning of this word. We have the ayin, which represents an eye, meaning to look, watch, or know. Again, the resh, a man's head, meaning first, top, beginning, or primarily. And the beit, the tent or floor plan, meaning home, family, or inn. We can now conclude, through a simple study of ancient Hebrew, that erev, evening, would more concretely be translated as looking primarily home or heading home. When do we head home, especially in the ancient times? In the afternoon or after midday, while there is still sufficient daylight to make it back before nightfall.
Man goeth forth unto his work and to his labor until the evening.
Also, erev can mean the eye starting to go inside or eye starting to close. When we get tired in the afternoon, we can become sleepy, especially after a hard day's work outside. In Hebrew, evening or erev is not the same word used for night or laila. Night is an entirely different word compared to evening. In addition to this, we should also understand that there is no word for afternoon in Hebrew. Hence, the word evening was and still is the classical term for the afternoon portion of the day, which lasts from midday until the going down of the sun.
And he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. And the damsel's father said, Comfort thine heart, I pray thee. And they tarried until afternoon, and they did eat, both of them. And when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the damsel's father, said unto him, Behold, now the day draweth toward evening. I pray you, tarry all night. Behold, the day groweth to an end. Lodge here, that thine heart may be merry. And tomorrow get you early on your way, that thou mayest go home.
Evening within itself does not mean the going down of the sun. This is a separate entity which refers to the actual sun setting or sunset. The going down of the sun is the literal sunset, which ends the evening portion of the day, as the following verses will attest. Devarim 23:11. But it shall be, when the evening cometh on, he shall wash himself with water, and when the sun is down, he shall come into the camp again. Yehoshua 8:29. And the king of Ai, he hanged on a tree until eventide, and as soon as the sun was down, Yehoshua commanded that they should take his carcass down from the tree and cast it at the entering of the gate of the city, and raise thereon a great heap of stones that remaineth until this day. Beth Devrei Yamim 18 and 34. And the battle increased that day. Howbeit the king of Israel stayed himself up in his chariot against the Syrians until the even, and about the time of the sun going down he died. To summarize, the evening period of time begins immediately after midday as the sun begins to traverse downward across the sky, or setting in a straight line westward, lasting until sunset or the going down of the sun in the west. By now, we can conclude that the day will not end until the sun sets under the horizon. But before we move on to defining the night Hebraically, let's explore another supposed dilemma in the scriptures. So you might be asking, what about Bereshith 1:5, 1:8, 1:13, etc., which state that the evening and the morning completed each day? Doesn't this prove that the day starts in the evening? This is a fair concern, but now that we have defined what the evening actually is, we can take a closer look at what happened during the first 5 verses of Bereshith to break this down even further. In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. This is more of a subject line as to what the Most High will accomplish in the first chapter. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. The Most High's Ruach, spirit or wind, is now moving upon the face of the waters. The earth has no form, but water is already present. So the Most High has not actually created anything yet. And Elohim said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. The Most High's creative process began when light was created. It did not start before this point in time. As his voice went forth, this first commandment was enacted out of nothingness and without hesitation. And Elohim divided the light from the darkness. The Most High separated day from night, and you will find that there is nowhere in Scripture where he ever put them back together. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Verse 5 of Bereshith in Hebrew reads, Vayikra Elohim laor yom, v'lachoshech kara laila, vayahi erev, vayahi voker, yom echad. Mechanically, the last line reads, and it was evening, and it was morning, day 1. But sadly, we will always lose some meaning in translation. The ending prologue of Hokmath Yeshua ben Sirah, or the wisdom Yeshua ben Sirah, or Ecclesiasticus, states in the Apocrypha, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them, and not only these things, but the law itself, and the prophets, and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. What this is saying is that the Torah itself, which includes the book of Bereshith, mind you, gets watered down when translated into another tongue. But if you were a proficient reader of the Hebrew language and Torah, you should not be able to see any small difference in the intended meaning or translation. So in other words, we should be able to change the order of some of these words and still arrive at the same meaning. So can we really deduce from Bereshith 1:5 that a day begins at evening because evening is mentioned first, like the religion of Rabbinic Judaism teaches? Is evening mentioned first in this verse? What does the Most High say? The very first thing that the Most High tells us in this verse is that light equals day. And Elohim called the light day. The second thing the Most High tells us is, and darkness he called night. The Most High has now created the 2 seasons of day and night. This is not a 24-hour day. Understand that by this point, the word evening has still not been mentioned. The third thing that the Most High says is, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Light. The Most High has already told us that number 1, light equals day, and that number 2, darkness equals night. Does he all of a sudden change his mind within the same verse to tell us that a day begins at evening? No. The Most High is simply telling us that in his definition of a day, he considers both the evening and morning together to be light. And I'm not about to argue with the creator of heaven and earth. Take a close look at the phrases, the evening and the morning and the evening in your own study. You will see that these phrases do not necessarily indicate the order in which a day begins and ends. Because in biblical Hebrew grammar, the word order of a sentence will not always indicate succession when translating into another language, especially English. The phrase, the evening and the morning, and similar expressions occur in these verses. However, the phrase, the morning and the evening, and similar expressions occur in these verses. Ben Sira's prologue in Ecclesiasticus is right. So far, we are not seeing a difference in the interpretation or translation when we read similar precepts from Scripture. It is rather obvious that neither the evening and the morning nor the morning and the evening can specifically indicate the time in which a day begins without contradicting one another. In addition, the phrases night and day and night do not necessarily indicate the order in which a day begins and ends. The phrase night and day and similar expressions occur in these verses, whereas the phrase day and night and similar expressions occur in these verses. It should again be obvious that neither night and day nor day and night can specifically identify when a new day begins. But still, many have concluded from Bereshit that the phrase, the evening and the morning, puts the beginning of a new day in the evening. What have we been taught that the second half of Bereshit 1:5 says? We have been taught that it says, from even unto even was the first day. False teachers are trying to pass off to people that the expression evening and morning is a from and to or unto prepositional phrase, as it is with the Day of Atonement in Wayikra 23 and 32, which specifically states from even unto even. They don't want you to use simple grammar and read Bereshit 1 and 5 as any conjunctive clause should be read, as in the evening and morning, or the evening also morning, or the evening in addition to morning was day 1. A similar expression is found in Tehillim 55 and 17, where we find David saying, evening and morning, and at noon will I pray. Every commentator that I have read states that David prayed 3 times a day. None of them state that he prayed 24 hours a day. Why? Because these are 3 different periods in a day. This is not a from and to phrase. In 1 Shemuel 17 and 16, we find Goliath presenting himself for 40 days, morning and evening, to Yisrael. Clearly, he did not stand there for 40 consecutive 24-hour periods. He appeared before Yisrael at 2 different periods every day, morning and evening. In Shemoth 18 and 13, we find that the people stood by Moshe from the morning unto the evening. Now, that's a from and to situation. David is speaking of 3 separate periods each day when he prayed. Goliath appeared at 2 different periods every day, and the Most High is speaking of 2 different periods within the same day when he says the evening and the morning in Bereshit 1:5. Again, these 2 periods, evening and morning, are considered daylight. Noted Hebrew scholar C.H. Leopold, on his exposition of Genesis Volume 1, explains, the verse, Genesis 1 and 5, however, presents not an addition of items, but the conclusion of a progression. On this day, there had been the creation of heaven and earth in the rough, then the creation of light, the approval of light, and the separation of day and night. Now with the evening, the divine activity ceased. They are the works of light, not the works of darkness. The evening, Erev, of course, means merges into night, and the night terminates with morning. But by the time morning is reached, the first day is concluded, as the account says succinctly, the first day, and everything is in readiness for the second day's task. For evening marks the conclusion of the day, and morning marks the conclusion of the night. Leopold's point is simply that after each day creative activity, there followed evening, and when morning arrived, another day of creative activity began. To sum up his commentary in verse 5 of Bereshith, we see that on day 1, all the works of Elohim were accomplished by the evening. The division between light and darkness are now a separate phenomenon called day and night. Notice that evening and morning came after the day and night were created. Then you must have a night period in between the evening and dawn, which leads us into the next morning, which is not only the ending of the first entire day-night period in history, but it also marks the beginning of day 2. This is what the scripture means by the phrase, "And there was evening, and there was morning." The Most High from this point forward begins his work in the daylight which he had just created. Bereshith 1:5 does not say from even unto even, nor does it say from morning unto morning. And if after all these precepts you still believe that the evening begins the day, take a look at how Job confronted the unwise about this matter. But as for you all, do ye return and come now? For I cannot find one wise man among you. My days are past, my purposes are broken off, even the thoughts of my heart. They change the night into day. The light is short because of darkness. Who has changed his great law? False religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, as it was prophesied in Daniel 7:25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Let's explain this supposed contradiction posed by atheists and Bible critics. The issue arises in verse 16 of Bereshith chapter 1, where we see that the actual luminaries of the sky were not created into the fourth day. And Elohim made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And Elohim set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Up until the 4th day of creation, most people settle on the premise that it was the Most High's glory that lit up the earth, until he gave this job to the sun, moon, and stars. The problem with this assumption is that the Most High never says that he is this light, nor does it make sense as to why light would need to be created if the Most High was already illuminating the earth. A more concrete explanation of this dilemma might be shown by noting that the light that was created on the first day was a luminary altogether separate from Elohim, within which the sun, moon, and stars were originally contained. This body of light was not intended to sustain life or be used for signs, seasons, or years. This would be the job of the sun, moon, and stars. Bereshith 1:14 again says, "And Elohim said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And Elohim made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." Verse 16 of Bereshith shows us that the primordial body of light that the Most High created was a temporary phenomenon until the Most High transferred the duty of dividing the day from the night over to the sun and moon. Primordial meaning original or existing from the beginning. These great luminaries were then brought forth out of this primordial light into view and set in the firmament on the 4th day to make the earth more inhabitable. The word for made is Strong's 6213. Asa, which means to attend to, put in order, accomplish, or bring about. It would more appropriately be translated as brought forth in this verse. This is not the same word as Strong's 1254, bara, created, as in to shape, fashion, or create, always with Elohim as a subject, as we see with the previous verse in this chapter. This confirms that these luminaries were not created or made on the fourth day. Rather, they existed within the creation of the original light on the first day and were later extracted out of this body of light or put in order by Elohim to bring forth the sun, moon, and stars on the fourth day. When these luminaries were brought forth, with the exception of wind, precipitation, and the covenantal rainbow, as described during the days of Noach, the various weather patterns that we as humans experienced through the years were then accomplished. These enabled the earth to sustain life, warmth, cooling, clouds, and humidity, which enabled the morning mist that we see in Bereshith. We then have the four main seasons of spring, summer, fall, and winter. Hashemesh, the sun or the greater light, gives off bright, warm rays which sustain life, enabling plants, animals, and mankind to thrive, while Hayareach, the moon or the lesser light, gives off dimmer, colder rays for preserving the sustenance created. This is why when you stand in the shade during the day, it is cooler, but if you stand in the shade at night, it's warmer. But regardless of how we as men try to wrap our minds around this concept, on day 4, the Most High delegates his rulership over day and night to the luminaries that he set in the firmament. The sun, the greater light, to rule over the day, and the moon, or the lesser light, to rule over the night. He did not give the transition periods of dawn or twilight to determine our days. Thus saith Yahweh, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. Yahweh Sabaoth is his name. If those ordinances depart before me, saith Yahweh, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. And this is what our oppressors have done in this captivity. They have told us lies about how to keep our days, and in doing so, we have ceased from being a united people. Let's listen to some wisdom in Michele 30:5. Every word of Elohim is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Add not thou unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. We should be very careful when trying to study, decipher, and understand the Most High's words and instructions. We cannot add to or take away, meaning that it would be foolish to think that he would contradict himself by calling the day night or by combining day and night into one period of time, when he told us plainly that he separated them, and that in order to have day, you must have light with the sun ruling in the sky. So for review, let's play a simple game of counting the days according to Scripture. How many days and nights? And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. The answer is 40 days and 40 nights. How many days and nights? Now Yahweh had prepared a great fish to swallow up Yonah, and Yonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. The answer is 3 days and 3 nights, 3 day periods and 3 night periods. Again, the Most High never put these two periods back together. The only overlap period is during dawn and dusk. How many days and nights? And Moshe stretched forth his rod over the land of Mitzrayim, and Yahweh brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. The answer is 1 day and 1 night. Then the locusts came the next morning, beginning of day 2. Now here's some tough ones. How many days and nights? Therefore ye shall abide at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation day and night 7 days, and keep the charge of Yahuwah, that ye die not, for so I am commanded. The answer is 7 days, 6 nights. They did not have to count a 7th night, according to the commandment. How many days and nights? And the people stood up all that day, and all that night, and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 omers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. The answer is 2 days and 1 night. They started in the morning and ended in the evening of the 2nd day. They did not stand for 3 days and 3 nights, or 2 days and 2 nights, according to Jewish fables and traditions. This is actually very simple, Hebrews. I know this concept can be a struggle at first, but believe me, it is very liberating to know and understand this. For instance, we actually have been given more time by the Creator to prepare for the Shabbat than we originally thought possible. Since a day only exists during the daylight, the Sabbath day can only last this long as well. I'll explain the Sabbath day in conjunction with our discussion of Hebraic weeks and months in the upcoming parts of this series. For most of us, when we came into the knowledge of being Hebrew Israelites, we brought a lot of Christian baggage and worldly study methods with us. Some of us latched on to Jewish, Islamic, and extra-biblical sources to define for ourselves how the Most High formed our days. The Jewish impostors and other religious sects have had their chance to define our scrolls and deceive the remnant of Israel. But unfortunately for them, the truth will always rise to the surface. In every captivity, the Most High has always raised up his servants to bring Israel back into the true understanding of the covenant he made with their forefathers. Until next time, and as always, Yevarecha and Yahweh Yishmerecha. Shalom Aleichem. May Yahweh increase you and keep you, and peace be unto you.
While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night, shall not cease. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night, shall not cease.